my topic is, could it happen here? Right? So when I say that, a lot of people make the comparisons between Donald Trump and Hitler. And what happens is when you compare, the quickest way to lose anybody in a discussion or an argument is to compare him to Hitler, right? So people just kind of like, no, Trump hasn't killed millions of Jews, that's ridiculous, and they shut you down. But I'm not really looking at the aspect of, the killing of the Jews, which is, when you bring up Hitler, that's the first thing you think of. Even though Trump has inhumanely caged thousands of, Mexicans and South Americans at the border, right? So, what's the next step from there? That can be called a concentration camp, but I'm not looking at that aspect of it. I'm looking at it from the standpoint of how they came into power and comparing the times in which we are living right now to the times in 1920s Germany. So 1920s Germany was a prosperous democratic country, right? That, like the US is today. And Hitler didn't come in and take over by force. Hitler was democratically put in his position. So basically, he ran for office. He didn't win the presidency, but he got 36% of the vote. And he had a large following, even though he didn't win the election. So the president extended an olive branch, wanted to reach out to Hitler's supporters, say, I'm going to make you essentially the chancellor, which is like the prime minister. For those of us, from parliamentary backgrounds, they're part with the majority parliamentary seats. You are the prime minister. So he became essentially the prime minister. And so now, once he was in, the president is still the head of the government, but Hitler was the prime minister. So what happens is somebody set fire to the parliament building, and so Hitler convinced the president that we need to essentially more or less declare martial law, and under these conditions we're going to suspend certain rights, suspend the free press, and just gradually started taking over power. Started arresting his enemies and locking people up and what until he had no opposition. And the thing that people need to understand is these things didn't happen just boom overnight and him take over and done. It happened gradually by people not paying attention, people being so comfortable in their status and their wealth and their comfort, they didn't pay attention. So when I look at the US today, when I look at the things that Trump has done and is doing, like when in busting up these recent protests in DC, the man called out the military. The military is not supposed to operate like that on US soil. He literally, so of course he had burning and looting the previous night. But at this time, this was in the daytime, people were just holding up signs, protesting. This man wanted to go and take a picture in front of a church. So he called in the military, the US military, to shoot tear gas, rubber bullets, and run people out of the place so him and his crew can walk over to this boarded up church and take a picture holding up a Bible. And if you look in DC right now, military is all over, tanks going up and down the street in Washington, DC right now. And what bothers me, so it's not like this is one thing. It's step by step. He's doing these other things and has no opposition because the Republican Party, Democrats will oppose him, but Democrats don't have enough people to really, to change anything. They need Republican support. And the Republicans run the Senate, and they refuse to even speak ill of the man. So there is literally nothing that they will not allow him to do. So what's to stop him to declare martial law and say, this things aren't really safe with this coronavirus, so we're just not going to have an election because it's not safe, and just call off the election. I mean, who's going to stop him? Because if he does that, then what are the legal means to stop him? Okay, you have to take it to court. Right now, he has put like 100 and something judges on these courts. The Supreme Court is slanted in his favor. So that I say all this to say, people think that these things can't happen here but they can, and they are. You know, will it come to exterminating millions of people? No, but well, actually, I don't know, but it can happen. And as long as we are in our comfort and and just allowing this, we're living our lives with taking care of our kids and doing all the things that we need to do while these gradual steps are taking place. And he, just like Hitler, he started eliminating democratic institutions, things that are there to keep him in check, started dismantling them little by little while the people slept. And that is where we are today. And that is my fear. So, question is, could it happen here? And tell me why it, and if you don't think it could happen here, tell me why not.
Let me give some background on what's going on. And after I say what I have to say, y'all can tell me the similarities of what you see today and what went on in the 1920s and 1930s. So, as Chris said, in the 1920s, Germany was fine financially. They were Democratic Party. So what was going on in the U.S.? I'm gonna go to 1929. The U.S. stock market crashed, and the Great Depression followed. Now, some of y'all are wondering what happened to the stock market. Well, the problem is that we were trading money, trading stocks with borrowed money. So money that we didn't have, we were actually using that to trade stocks. Bad business. So that's like me going to Chris and saying, yo, I got a feeling, man, these numbers gonna hit. Let me borrow $1,000. And Chris say, yo, Sam, you only got my rent money, but since you got a hunch, I trust you. I'm gonna give it to you. Guess what? I take that money, I go play my numbers, they don't hit. So guess what? I was already broke because I had to come to Chris for $1,000. Then Chris just got evicted.
Hey! Not this Chris. Some other random Chris.
But y'all know what I mean. So we using money that we don't have. Germany at the time, okay, we're going through some rough times, and as well. This was about 1933. The unemployment was about a third of the force, so there's about 6 million people unemployed. Most of these people that were unemployed were men. Back then, men were the breadwinners, the providers. Women were supposed to stay home and take care of the kids, and tend house. So, with this many people unemployed, here comes who? Adolphus Rice. Some of them. Hitler. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Yeah. So here he comes, okay? And these men didn't have jobs, and he had a message of hope. I think he said something like,
"Wolf tickets,
make Germany great again." Something like that.
It was something very close. It was something very close.
Sound familiar? Okay. Yep. Something like that. And with these men not having worked and them being always the leader of their family, and this opportunity to put food on the table, guess what they did? They joined the army, made it one of the biggest armies in the world. Okay, so like we're saying, nobody wanted to touch him because he was over the army. Okay, he had the biggest military force ever, so nobody's going to touch him at that point. Now, there's a lot of similarities in what's going on today, but one thing I can say is we're ahead of the curve.
The question is, can it happen? Yes, it's possible. The only thing is the mindset, I think, of this generation is a little bit different. So there'll be fight back. But there was fight back then. There was a lot of fight back. Hence, a lot of people who died. So now, I think it might be a little bit harder, but can it happen? Yeah, I don't see a lot of political resistance. And even if there's political resistance,
there's none.
It's not. I mean, they couldn't impeach him.
They did impeach him.
Impeaching is trying, but they couldn't get him out.
No, so basically, impeachment
means taking him to trial.
Right. So impeachment was indictment. He was indicted. He didn't go to jail.
Yeah. So that's what I meant. He wasn't kicked out. He wasn't found guilty. He wasn't kicked out. Right.
Right.
So that in its sense showed you that, you know, it's a different thing. And the way things look right now, he's positioned himself for another fourth. He's positioned himself, and you know, to where he can do exactly the things that you listed. You know, whether you want to use the martial law, whether he wants to use the pandemic as a reason not to go ahead and have the election, whether he wants to, you know, go ahead and put a freeze on there and tap into the 1827 laws, you know, whatever it is, he has some things that he's playing with, and you know, he quite possibly could.
Right. We're still black in America, but don't think it can be worse than it is, because it can definitely be worse. And that's, you know, I get, you know, pretty irritated at people who really don't think, for the people who decide, people who are eligible to vote but don't vote because they don't think it makes a difference. Like, well, it's like, well, if you don't vote, it definitely will make a difference, because I mean, people who want to see your destruction, I want to see you fall and die, and your children and your children's children, they're getting up and going to vote. So you decide what you want to do. And if you ever knew how they strategize to try to prevent you from voting, then you would take it a lot more seriously. You know, so, you know, I think we are, I agree with all the issues around racial injustice that you said, but what I want people to realize is, you know, things can be worse than they are right now. You know, can they start rounding up people? Can they start rounding, okay, let's say not all people, but let's say immigrants, you know, legal or illegal. Can they find some little thing in some 18th century law that if you reword it such a way that I'm telling you, there are so, I thought, you know, when we go to school and we learn about the US government, about checks and the balances and the federal, you know, the judiciary and the legislative system, and they all check each other. And so you didn't think like some of this was possible. What I'm now realizing, a lot of those things are assuming people have good faith, assuming that people have good intentions. You know, there are many things that, you know, like when did you ever realize that a congressional subpoena was basically optional? I mean, they subpoena Trump and all these people, and they just say, nah, they're just not doing it.
Yeah.
So there are so many things that that relies and assumes people have good intentions. But so that's why, and that's the thing that really scares me, because I realize that there is no teeth behind this. If Trump say I'm not holding the election, what is going to happen? I mean, are people going to go in and physically remove him from office? Like, what are the mechanisms to do something? I'm not talking about writing a strongly worded letter in the Washington Post or the New York Times. I don't care about any of that. What are the mechanisms that we have to enforce him to do something? And I just say, you know, it's kind of like a kid, right? You know, we all have kids. You know, a kid, you know, make a wrong step. You don't say anything. They take another step and another step and another step until, you know, they're on the ledge about to fall off. So that's what I see with Trump. Try one good thing. Let me try the Muslim ban. All right, and then, you know, the court sent it back and said, well, let me reword it in a couple of ways until let me ban Muslims from certain countries, and we allow it, and so get away with that. And just take another step and another step, and I just see this gradual encroachment where he is basically, you know, besides turning people against each other, he is just disrupting the system, and nobody is getting in his way to stop him. And we're going to look around at this rate, and it's going to be too late.